Adesso, dopo questo...
After that delightful speech from Mr. Albiani, we'll move back to the technology side of things. I would like to ask Piero Gattoni from the Italian Biogas Consortium to tell us about new agriculture and the well-made biogas. I know that Mr. Gattoni has a great deal to say, but please make an effort to be as brief as possible.
Dario purtroppo proprio in questo momento è dovuto andare per una breve...
Dario has just had to pop out to do a brief interview on rye, but he's very disappointed to not be able to listen to Piero, but we will pass on the presentation.
Grazie, scusate, non la vedevo, grazie.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Tamburano and Ecofuturo, for this fantastic opportunity. I think that being here with you today as a European citizen is a way of seeing how we're doing what needs to be done. We're looking at the best innovations, technology, and they're brought together to try to find the best possible solutions. This is something that I've always appreciated in the Ecofuturo group, starting with Jacopo and Fabio. I've always been happy to speak to them. And our work came out of these discussions. I would like to talk to you about a new facility, and yet it uses one of the oldest techniques from nature. We're talking about anaerobic digestion of inorganic material. If you think about Indian villages, when there is wells for animal slurry, for instance, they produce a gas, a biogas that can be used to cook. So all we're talking about is a biotechnology that's free and one that could quite easily be developed to suit all global contexts. We in Italy got started a bit later than other countries, particularly Germany, but in Italy in the last 6 years we've set up 1,400 plants in farms and invested 4.5 million euros and created many jobs. And this is something that is starting to be incorporated into the Italian agro-industrial sector. As Fabio said before in his introduction about this innovative madness that we need, we need creativity to create this growth. People know more about this than me, but the GDP registers everything that's important to a country, but something that it will not bring value to your life. So all these figures which are so important to Italy doesn't really explain what's happening. What has happened in Italy? In Italy, we've started to think about how we were producing energy. Our question was, would producing this energy help? And our answer was yes. So we had to start by focusing on the land. We believe that if we want to tackle climate change or many other problems that we're facing, then we can't do that without looking at how we change our use of land. For example, when we went to Expo, we started to talk about biogas, not just as a renewable energy, but as something additional, something that would allow our companies to have a new approach to use land in a more intensive way, but in a sustainable way as well. And this is something that everyone apart from farmers are talking about. If land is so important, we can see this in all the peer review papers. They always say that everyone is responsible for everything, but apart from people who farm the fields. So we decided to look at that. What are our objectives? We firmly believe that population growth and pressure from climate change are going to lead to an increase in demand for food, feed and fibre of over 70% by 2050. Over the last 30 years, we've tended to follow the linear paradigm to increase more per hectare at any cost. But that's without thinking about the long-term result of all that. So for us, the solution is that we have to move. We have to ensure that agriculture moves from being part of the problem to part of the solution. So we need innovation, creativity, and economic sustainability. This is something that I would have liked to say to Mr. Tamburrano, but we'll meet him later. He raised many true points about the decision-making process. But there's another topic that's linked to this, which is excess red tape in all these procedures. Food energy is something that's been discussed for a long time in Europe, and indicators have been created to the ILUC directive to say what is creating competition within land use, so indirect land use change. So whatever you produce in Europe, then you also have to remember the food that goes into that, and you have to take account of it. We're not going to go into that, but this theory hasn't really had any results because the use of fuels in the world has increased by 45%. Agricultural commodity prices have dropped in comparison with 30 years ago. If we'd seen real competition, then that would have had an impact on price, and we just haven't seen that. So actually the problem we have today is the opposite. We need to have a circular approach. We have to start to understand that in agriculture, as in other industries, we have to use everything, all byproducts, produce without in a more intensified manner, but without using more commodities. Today, we don't need more commodities that are worthless. This is the effect of the anaerobic digester. They have allowed us an opportunity to open up a new market that before we couldn't, and that's the energy market. We use agro-industrial byproducts, we use second harvests. This is something that agriculture has always done, because in the European agrarian tradition, however, it's almost disappeared. So what has biogas done right? Well, it means keeping the land covered throughout the year. So there's agriculture during the August and winter, which is used for gas at that period, but then it can be used for food in the spring, summer. So we can use the photosynthetic pump better, and through the anaerobic digesters, we take it back to the land. It's also the perfect place to store coal because it costs the least and it's the most easily feasible. We've worked with a French consortium. It was launched at COP21. It's called Cap Pongil. Here, the French research and academic world put forward a theory, said that if we improved our use of 4 out of 1,000 agricultural products across the world, we could prevent the 1.52 degree temperature rise. Why is it important that we have these exchanges here in Europe? For the last 20 years, we've been used to having a grain harvest in spring, then you leave the land empty, then you produce corn, and then you leave it empty again. That's the typical rotation that we're used to. But what are we saying? We're saying that if there's a market, we can produce grain, grain for energy, then we can produce corn and then soy. And this has all been made possible by the fact that the digester feeds nutrients back into the soil and acts as a fertilizer. This is not just a theory linked to cultural practices. It's actually an approach, and this is why we feel so close to Ecofuturo. It allows technology to have more opportunities. We don't think that the solution to the problem is just using things more quickly or slowly or whatever. We have technologies that have to be used. This is precision farming. Here we can sow seeds without disturbing the soil. We can fertilize just the very small line, the row of crops. There are new mechanisms in farming to ensure that farming is better managed. In anaerobic digestion, nitrogen becomes higher in sodium, so it can be used for better coverage, and you can use what you need when you need it. Yeah, 15 years ago, I would have thought, if you told me that I could cut my fertilizer use by half, I would have said it was impossible. But now, in the Padana plain, you can see that in the Po valleys, we're using a lot less because that was the phase we were at 15 years ago after so many years of monoculture. This is an example in Cremona, where after the winter harvest, you can then sow new lines of crops. However, we have to stand firm when we talk to legislators here in Europe. We've spoken to Ecofis, who are a company specializing in sustainable environmental measures, and we've asked them to check sustainability criteria against our company. This was presented last week in Rome in our Biogas Italy forum, and you can find information about that on the consortium's website. So the agency came and verified what they saw is that we're not producing the same amount of carbon, and we're more sustainable in terms of biodiversity and efficient use of nitrogen and water. Then CRPA University, we were able to calculate emissions. In comparison with normal fossil fuels, and we looked at biomethane produced by different types of products that had been digested. For a fossil fuel, it might be 60% expressed in megajoules, but we're now 4 times lower with biomethane than we would be with conventional gases. And what's also interesting is that we can actually become carbon negative because we use runoff, and the way in which we combine that with rotation means that we're able to carry out carbon capture. We have a digester that works on particular biogas, and the goal is actually to capture carbon in the soil. This is incredible, and I think that slowly we can move in this direction. I'm taking time off my friend Massimo, but I would like to say that anaerobic digestion is just a pretext for us. This technology helped us to understand how we have to change our farming sector. If you look at how waste is separated and being recycled, it used to be composted, and they would take certain waste and compost it to produce bioenergy. This can be done well or badly. In Italy, I think for the first time the business world is talking about doing things well. They're taking responsibility and saying that that's the direction we want to move in, because we want this to last beyond the 15-year incentive. We're not producing biogas just because of the incentive, but in producing biogas, it means that our other traditional companies can become more competitive. For example, look at Parmesan production. Sometimes world market prices are so low that we can't be competitive anymore. I have to help my businesses in other sectors become competitive. In doing that, we've found alliances with the world of waste management, the recycling organizations. We've also found links in the gas industry and transport. If you look at the gas distribution structure, after a long time, they're understanding that this is a huge opportunity for gas networks as well. We're talking about over 8 billion cubic meters by 2020. 12% natural gas consumption in our country, an opportunity to decarbonize agriculture and transport. Without that, things would be more difficult. What we're trying to talk about is making better use of the infrastructure that we have, and that will probably allow renewable energies to be better planned without excessive cost. If you look at power to gas and other innovations, we can use the electrical energy that's produced during peak times to help to produce hydrogen. So this is a huge revolution. Of course, we need cooperation from industry. We need agriculture to work with us. For the first time, we're going to have to explain to farmers, not that they can't do certain things, but that they can use the environment to develop in a new way. We have to do this properly. And it involves key players. We need careful lawmaking and politicians who understand the directives we need and who understand that in the issues we're having to tackle today, if you look at the speakers that came before me, you can see there is huge potential for sustainable ethical development, and which will be of huge interest to society. This is what we're trying to do, and we want to do that with Ecofuturo, who we would like to thank once again for allowing us to be here.
Questa è la nostra decorazione, se puoi rimanere.
This is our decoration which we're giving to everybody.